Rowan is here. She graduated from Syracuse 2023, 2,
Three. Three. Yeah.
2023. She would like to end up in documentary and work internationally. And on her journey there, she needed to start off at home in the Scranton area, Pennsylvania. And so she is learning how to transfer her television, radio, film skills into the local market and will continue her journey outside of that market one day. But she's got a lot of local market knowledge and she's going to tell you all of it today. She looks so confident that she has this.
I don't feel confident, but sure, I can look it. I thank you for the introduction, Shayna. Yeah, I started working here in Scranton. I'm sure many of you know it from The Office. Yes, Kiki knows it very well. And so yeah, I have slides to share, so I'm gonna do that, and hopefully it all works out. Yeah, I think it worked. Can you guys see it?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So, oops. Yeah, so like Shane talked about, I'm going to be talking about commercial production. Oh, actually, you didn't say that, but I'm going to be talking about the broadcast world. So right now I'm a commercial producer, and I'll talk about that. But then I'm also going to talk about small town media and then non-traditional TRF trajectories after college and how you can use those skills from TRF into broadcast and how they're very transferable between different like communication um like um like concentrations like PR or advertising or anything like that. So we're talking about the broadcast world first. So I work at Nexstar Media Company. It's one of the big three.
Rowan,
Yeah.
I think wherever your notes are, they're on top of your slides.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So I work at Nexstar Media Company. I There are three major companies. So there's Tegna, Nexstar, and Sinclair. I worked at two out of the three companies, and I can explain that later. But basically, we cover this area here, if you can see that. It's a picture of snow, the outlook from our weather channel. But we cover Scranton and Wilkes-Barre, Hazleton, different places in northeastern Pennsylvania. So closer to New York, closer to New Jersey. So it's a pretty big market size. We serve 20 to 22 counties. We're in the top 60 market. I think we're 58. And I believe it's out of 240. So across the entire US, everything's divided up into markets. Um, New York and LA are the obviously biggest markets. They have more people there living there, obviously. So to be like a top 60 market is pretty good. It's a great way to start your career. There are actually a lot of Syracuse grads that work in my station. I'm not sure if anyone knows anybody who works there, but I don't know if you would be that class, but there are a couple people that work there that I graduated with. They were broadcast, I think, in their major though. But Nexstar owns the CW. I'm sure you all know what that is. I'm sure you've seen Gossip Girl and things like that. Except for our market. So Sinclair actually owns the CW in the Scranton area, which is crazy because Nexstar owns that nationally, but Sinclair owns it in our market, and they're currently holding. Nexstar wants to buy it, and Sinclair is currently holding Nexstar like by its like they're just trying to like keep it because it's like something they have over Nexstar. Um, and if you live in LA, Nexstar owns KTLA, which is like a pretty big station for us. If you ever heard of it, if you have cable television. If you don't, I totally understand. But broadcast is a great way to start your career if you don't know what you want to do, or like I feel like when I started college, I really wanted to be a screenwriter. And then obviously that transitioned as I went throughout my career. So this is a great way to start to get some skills and experience. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about my journey. So there's me and Shayna hugging at graduation. I love that picture of us. So I graduated in December 2022, but I walked in May of 2023 because I had enough credits. So that was really nice because I kind of had that semester where everyone was finalizing everything to kind of apply for jobs. But that didn't really work out well because it's a lot harder than what it seems like. But when I was in college, I took a bunch of classes. Like I said, I wanted to be a screenwriter when I was a like freshman, like coming into Syracuse. Um, but that didn't happen. And then I really loved editing, so I took Shayna's classes, which were amazing classes. But then I was like, oh, this isn't for me either. I took a couple other classes. One of them was multi-camera production, and that was really good. I love that class, and that was really helpful for my career, where I am now. And then I also like took a bunch of like history classes for my minor, and I loved it. And I realized that I really wanted to do documentaries. So, in 2022, Shayna and I went to Italy to do documentaries. Great. Learned so much from there, from that experience. And then I ended up doing my capstone, my final project, a documentary about the Algerian War, which was because that was my minor was Middle Eastern history. So I really loved that. And when I left college, I had that semester that where everyone was finishing. I had that time to apply for jobs. And I was like, I'm gonna do documentaries, I'm gonna do this, and it didn't work out. So I in January of 2023, I got a job at Fox 56, which is the Sinclair. Sinclair owns that, so that's how I worked for Sinclair. But my parents are both in the broadcast industry. So I'm kind of like a nepo baby, which I hate to say that. I'm not like the Kardashian Jenner people, but he did give me a job doing live sports, which I was qualified for. So it's not like he just gave me a job, but that was really nice to have to start off, get experience. And then I also worked 4 other jobs while I was doing that. So ended up selling candles and perfume, which is great, loved it. And then I waitressed. But then I also got a job as a PA at my current station, WBREWYLU. So I learned a lot from that. So I was doing 4 jobs all at the same time, but I learned a lot, and I ended up becoming it's like MVP, it's like this little award thing they have, and it's not like a big deal, but I learned a lot from that experience because I was only there 9 months when I was given that, and there was a reason why I was given that, but, that's for the later slides. But next, I'm gonna talk about what I do as a production or what I did as a production assistant, because 'cause I'm not a production assistant anymore. Um so my schedule was 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. Um, and it is that was a lot. Waking up early is not easy. You have to start somewhere, but I learned a lot. You're doing camera, you're like, if you're looking at an anchor, someone has to stand behind that camera. And there's different shots and everything, and people have to move the cameras. That's what a production assistant is. Um, so you have a rundown, you would know what the show looks like. You have to set up the studio, you have to do audio, you have to do graphics, you have to do a bunch of different things live, and you have to learn all that. So you're learning a lot already to begin with. Um, and you'll meet amazing people because 4 a.m. people, you just like you're all up. There's nobody in the office. It's like a ghost town almost. But you have such a strong bond, and I love all the people I work with. I work with a lot of old curmudgeons who have been in the industry for like 30 plus years. But I love them. I wouldn't trade them for the world. So it's amazing. But you have a lot of downtime in between those shows, so you can learn a lot of other things too. But it's also important to to remember that everything is live. So like when you move a camera, you have to like make sure your camera's not hot. It's not active. The director doesn't have it up. And then what I did at Fox was a bunch of live events. So these events were football games, basketball games, and they were a little bit more difficult because when you're a production assistant on the news, you're just getting a shot of like an anchor. You're not doing like a lot. But for the games, you actually have to like pay attention to the game. I grew up with sports in my entire life, but I don't really like them. But I still you have to follow along. So someone who doesn't understand sports, I felt like I was like, "Where's the ball?" So you have to, like, follow it with your camera and then hope that the director doesn't take you. You have a headset on, so someone will tell you when you are live, but it's a little bit chaotic and stressful, so you have to be ready for that. Um, so basically, you have to set up when you go to a football let's say we're going to a football game. You set up, your you have to set up the entire, like, camera scaffolding, so, like, the picture on the right, I'm on top of a very suspicious kind of scaffolding. I don't really trust it, but it was fine. I'm here, so clearly that's fine and it's safe, but it's a little, like, shaky, so it's a little scary. But you have to go across, like, the entire football field. So there's one camera on the one end zone and the other camera on the other end zone. And then you have two cameras up top. And then you have to set up everything for like the broadcasters, the anchors who are speaking. So the mics and everything and their TV so that they know what's happening. And then you have to set up like the internet, Bluetooth, things like that, so we can all connect. So there's a bunch of wires coming out of every camera and they're all going to one place, and we have a truck. So on the left is a picture of the truck. Back when B-Reel was like very popular, I was doing that. So those are the pictures I have. But you can kind of see everybody there. There's the producer, director, and then there's the audio booth all the way in the back. There's the graphics, the engineers, and I did second channel graphics, which meant that any like when you're watching a game and they have the scoreboard, I did the scoreboard. So I had to make sure that all the scores were correct, the time was right. And then there's other things on there like fouls and stuff. So you had to make sure all that was correct. And you had to pay attention to the game. So you set up, you end up doing what's it called? Pre-tape segments. So like different things that we're gonna roll on, test things like test like to make sure all the graphics are correct. Every especially the players, because like a lot of times grandparents are watching because they can't come to the game. So make sure all the names are correct. And then you kind of can chill out. You have some pizza. They provide pizza for you. It's very fun. It's like a great. You're sitting in a school cafeteria. It's like you're in high school again. And then once the game starts, you are live. So, like, being live, it's again stressful, it can be chaotic. You have to watch the game. Thankfully, you'll have amazing directors, hopefully, that will talk you through all of it and it'll work out. But yeah, it's a great time. It's a little chaotic. But then when the game's over, everyone's like, let's go home. I want to go home. It's 10 o'clock at night. It's freezing, especially in football season in northeastern Pennsylvania. It can be 2 degrees. It's really cold. So it's you're definitely just wanna, like, get everything done, get everything packed up, throw it in a van, and get back to the station, and then we can deal with it the next day. But you need to, like, break that down because you obviously don't leave anything at, the football stadium. So, yeah. So then what ended up happening while I was a production assistant was I started helping out in creative services, and this is one of the reasons why I got that little award thing was because when I got that award, my boss, my production boss, was like, "You're the embodiment of a production assistant," and I didn't know what that meant because I was like, "I guess sure." But now that like I'm looking back at it, I'm like, "Oh, it really was," because a lot of the production assistants, we there's a lot of downtime between your morning shows and then your midday shows. So you can kind of learn different things. So I ended up starting helping out in news. So I started producing things. So I started doing, hour-long newscasts, helping out with that. I would go out and shoots and do live shots and different things. And I also, like I said, like it says here, I started helping out in creative services. So those backgrounds that the anchors are standing in front of, I made those. So one on the right, is one of the first ones I ever made, and that was so special to me because I was home when I made it and I sent it off. I don't know when they're going to use it, and I was home and I was with my family and my grandparents were over, and that was like the first time I've ever seen anything that was my own on TV, and to be with my family was really incredible because I had no idea that was gonna happen. So, like, that was really cool because you don't think about, like, people watching it, but when you make these things, but it's, like, really cool. And then the other one on the left is one of the ones that, I really like too. It's an okay graphic. But I started helping out, and that was thanks to Shayna's classes because I was a production assistant, like I said, and I had all this time and I didn't want to just sit around. I want to do stuff. So I talked to my boss, my one of my directors, and I was like, "Can you introduce me to the creative services director?" I went up to her, said, "Hi, like my name's Rowan. I have all these skills. I know." And we use Adobe products. So thankfully, like at Syracuse, we have that. So I was like, "Oh, I use this Adobe product and this one," and I'm naming all these. And she was like, "Perfect. I just lost my one of my graphic designers. I need someone to just do graphics for me." I was like, "I'm happy to do it." So I started taking stuff. And it's not like she had to teach me how to use Photoshop. She didn't have to teach me how to use anything else. I already knew how to do those things, thankfully, to Shayna's classes. So those skills really helped me get to where I am today. So I ended up making those graphics because I already had those skills, and my boss was just like, "Here, take these," and I was like, "Okay, great." So that's kind of why I was the embodiment of a production assistant, because I was doing other things and learning to like better further my career. So yeah. And I had other opportunities outside of like WBRE or the news station. I also got into the Netflix DART program, which I've talked about on these meetings before. DART is the documentary archival research training program. Um, so that was like I was the inaugural class, which was really fun. And I met amazing people in the industry. We talked about how to use archival film, and how to like document it. So then when you have to submit for copyright, you have all the necessary information, how to preserve it, how to keep it clean and not go old. And luckily at my job, I don't know if it's luckily, but there's a huge basement filled with archives, old film, old tapes, different kinds of tapes too, and like 3/4 inch and beta tapes, all the things that like my parents would have used back in the day. So those things are just sitting down there. These films are like these tapes are just sitting down there and no one's really using them. So I'm able to use that because I started getting more into it and I'm starting to like record things so that we have it digitally now. So that was really cool to like use those skills and have that come into like what I'm doing at my job every day. So that was really fun. So I have other opportunities outside of my actual job. But then I became a commercial producer in September 2024. And how that ended up happening was because I was doing graphics already with creative services. One of the commercial producers was going through difficult times and just had like things happening in his life. And my boss was like, "I need commercials done. Can you do a commercial?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can do a commercial." And I started doing them really, really fast. I'm a really fast editor. And I think again, that's because of Shayna's classes, just because of the nature of her classes. I just had to edit really fast. So I was able to just bang them out. And the salespeople were like, "What? Like, how can you do this so fast?" So unfortunately, that other commercial producer had to leave. There was an opening. And I kept saying, "I don't want a full time job. I don't want a full time job. I don't want a full time job." And then I got a full time job. So I ended up taking it. I was like, "Yeah, like it'll be good for me." And unfortunately, due to budget and different stuff happening in broadcast, I had to do two jobs at once because I got the commercial production job, and then so many production assistants left that they didn't have anyone to fill. So they couldn't fill my job, they couldn't fill other people's job that I worked with. So I worked Monday, Tuesday as a commercial producer. And then I went to another job on Wednesday. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday mornings, I did production. I still did camera. So I kind of did a lot. And in fact, it's funny, I had my employee review today for like the yearly review. And my boss was like, "Yeah, I can't believe you did that. You went from 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. doing camera, and then from 1 to like 3 you did commercials because I would stay after just to get things done." And she's like, "I'd be like dead on my feet." And I was like, "Yeah, it pretty much was." Pretty much was. It's not easy. And people who would like come in and they'd be new to the job, they meet me and they're like, "So what do you do here?" And I'm like, "Everything." Like I just do everything. I would if people called out on, especially on a Saturday morning because no one staffed Saturdays, I'd have to produce or I'd have to edit just because there wasn't anybody there. So I kind of just, I had these skills from college that I was like, "Oh, I can just do this." And they're like, "Oh, great," you know. So finally now, 4 months, 5 months later, I actually make commercials and I'm finally hired and um as a full-time commercial producer, and they trained people to take my job away. So now I just sit in an office all day and edit commercials. It's great. Yeah. I should check the chat because I just saw that there were things. Oh, yes, Riverdale was on CW. I just saw that. Um, so yeah. Uh, There we go. So this, like I keep saying, the skills that I had in school really benefited, what I'm doing right now. So some of the skills that like I talked about were multi-camera production. That was great. When I took that class, I didn't think it was going to benefit me. I not that it was going to benefit me, but I didn't think it would have anything to do with my career now. And boy was I wrong, because I came in as a production assistant. I already knew how to do cameras because they're the same ones that you have in school. I had the editing softwares that, like, we all used Adobe, so it was really nice because I was just like, "Oh, I already know how to use these. I'm already comfortable using it." I had graphic design classes I had in school, and I was able to create graphics, like I said. Um, and also, like, I think of broadcast as real-time documentaries, because documentaries is all about preserving history for future generations, at least in my eyes, and sharing people's stories. And that is exactly what broadcast is. You're sharing people's stories. You're just doing it in real time. You're not editing it to like be very cinematic and beautiful, which is great, but this is like happening now. We're gonna get this out to you now so people know. So yeah. And then we're gonna talk about commercials. So I'm gonna show you some of the commercials, hopefully the sound plays, that I've made in the past few months, and some different things that we have to do as a commercial producer. And then we're gonna talk about what goes into making commercials, because there's like a whole process, and it can be it can be tough.
Losing weight isn't just about numbers. It's about feeling good, feeling strong, and feeling like yourself again.
We have the products to fit your needs. Visit Alaska Company and Glowing Embers for warmth, quality, and style you can trust.
Going to the movies has changed. It's not just a movie anymore, it's an experience.
From tender brisket to flavorful smoked wings, enjoy a cozy atmosphere and hearty favorites. All in the comfort of your backyard.
Savor phenomenal food, crafted by our award-winning chef, Frank Priore. Host your weddings and events in our versatile spaces.
From Liverpool, Karen Payne, and Z Supply, to Kendra Scott and Nora Fleming, and so much more.
So give them a call.
So this is one of the other, so we make commercials, but then one of the other things you have to do is for PA Live. It's a lifestyle talk show kind of show. It's basically a sales show. A lot of clients come on, they want to sell their products. It's like from 3 to 4, so you're not getting a lot of viewers. But we still have to do the segments. So this was from Valentine's Day. We called it PA Love. That's what they called it. And the host got a tuxedo, so I had to film it. And I actually thought I did a little montage, and it came out pretty cute. And I was like, oh, that'd be perfect to share today.
I'll give them a visit. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. And I can truly attest that the fitting session is nothing but spectacular. So a wonderful time and experience for everyone.
In the afterlife, I see your face. You smile like the summer sun, and it feels so right when I hear that bass. The night has just begun.
2822.
Ooh, did not mean to do that. Oh, wait, sorry. So then one of the other things we have to do, which my bad, was
And it feels the night
22 News is brought to you.
these like station IDs and billboards. They're quick 5-second things that we have to do to just add on to like their sponsorship things. So we have to do that. So I'll play this.
By O'Donnell Law, justice for all, one case at a time.
Retra, men's and women's clothing and accessories, downtown Lewisburg.
And then the last thing we have to do is banner ads. You know those ads that you see when you're like on a website, you have, and like those things pop up. We have to make those. It's like the last thing I want to do. But yeah. Yeah, so that's what I have to do every day. I have to kind of make all of those. So how that works is, now if it'll move. There we go. So as a commercial producer, this is the process that it goes through to make a commercial. So the sales people have to sell clients our services and TV time. So our services can be anything from the banners that I make, just banners, or it could be a whole commercial, or it can just be like some like a billboard or a station ID. So you can kind of have different times for that. So those time slots, it can be in the morning newscast, it can be the night newscast, it can be during the day, but those cost more money depending on, what time it is. So morning news versus nightly news. Morning news is obviously gonna be less expensive than nightly news. And then you also have the weekend versus the weekday. So the weekends are not as they're like less expensive because you're not getting a lot of viewers. So it kind of bases off the average viewer count that we have, every month. So that always depends. But the nightly news, more people are watching, so it's gonna be more expensive. So the sales kind of write up what they need. They get the call to action. So you're also doing marketing with this. So I've never done marketing, so I'm kind of learning, how to do a little bit of marketing while I'm getting this job. So it's another skill I'm learning. But they kind of send me, hey, this is what I need. I need this. They want to they want to sell this. So maybe it's a certain product, or maybe they're in like right now we're St. Patty's Day, so maybe it's like they're serving green food. I don't know. So they kind of send me that. I have to either write a script. Sometimes I already have a script, whatever. I still have to write one at some point if I'm making a commercial. So I write a script. I send that off for approval because the client has to approve everything. And then I get it back. And I said, okay, so I send out for the VO. We have like a website that we use that we send out voiceover for. And then we acquire the different assets. So usually it's video, but sometimes we either go on a shoot, so we have to go to their location and shoot something, or they send me images, which then I have to like find a nice slideshow template to make it look really pretty, because otherwise it's just, images. Or sometimes they're like, I have nothing, just use Adobe stock, which sometimes work if it's just like a medical place or whatever, it usually is fine. But it always depends on what the client wants. So I edit that all together and make it look really pretty, like I showed you. And I add different things, and then I send it off for approval. Again, there's probably going to be revisions. Someone's name is spelled wrong, or something they want a lower third specific, so I'm always going to have to do revisions. And then once that gets approved, I send it to the server. So basically we master control, make it like it, when you're looking at a TV and you have this TV schedule, they basically make sure that TV schedule is correct and right, and everything's on time, and there's no black video or anything. And basically I think it was like 2 years ago, they got rid of master control at every station, and they consolidated it to one place for like East Coast, West Coast, and like different specific things. So our hub, we call it a hub, is in Dallas, Texas, which is so far away from Pennsylvania. But I have to send it there. We have different hard drives that we send things to, and then they receive it, and then the salespeople have to make traffic. So they basically say this has to go on at this time and on this day, and it repeats this certain time. So once that happens, then I have to make an invoice. What did we do a shoot? Did we do a stock? Did we use stock images? So I have to basically like put together what did they spend and how much are we charging them. And then if they needed display banners, which are the ads I showed you that are on the website, I'll make those too. So there's that. And then that's kind of it. Then the project is done. And then hopefully they don't ask for anything else, because sometimes they do. And I'm always like, oh, I thought this was done. So yeah. But I think it's important for small town media to still be around. Commercial production is a little bit a part of that, but it's such like it means a lot more to me now. When I started, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm like working in my hometown, whatever. But it like now, like I had to do this. I had to make this like presentation. I was like, wow, this is actually really important. And I always knew that in the back of my mind, but I'm like, wow, like I didn't realize how much this had to impact on me. Because on the left, I met this guy at one of the fairs, and he made me so many fried pickles. I love fried pickles. He made me 2 orders. So you're just meeting so many people out in the community. And as someone who's very outgoing, I love talking to different people. Like I love that. I don't know, I forget what his name was. I forget what his name was. but I'm sure my boss knows. But it was just so much fun to like meet those kind of people. But you're sharing their stories. So like we got to share like how he created this business. He owns like a pickle business, and how he started it. It was really cute. But it's also important to keep the community informed and then to contribute to the culture of that area, because we do different things like we do different drives, and like we collect coats for to give to kids, and different things like that, and it's just important to keep the community informed because national news can keep you informed on what's happening in the nation and the world, but it's not going to tell you what's happening in your own backyard, and that's so important. You won't know of protests that are going on, you won't know of parades happening, of different things happening. If the roads are closed, you don't know those things. So it's really important, small town media. And I just hope it keeps going. Because people are history. And so one of the things I like I said, is um, broadcast is just real time documentaries, and it's so important to me. And I think history is very important to me, and history is about people, and it's about the people who live here. I think when historians are gonna like look back, like kind of how we look back at the Middle Ages or Renaissance, we want to know what happened, like specific. We want details, and I feel like the national news won't really do that unless it's like a big story. Um, Whereas we're gonna like local news is gonna get into the nitty-gritty, and we're gonna give you pieces about people you didn't know about, like different businesses that they have and stuff. So I just think it's super important. And it's just preserving people's history. And I think that's also why the archival film in the basement means so much to me. And it's great to use in documentaries too, and I'm hoping to do that soon. And make documentaries for the station. So some of the takeaways that I learned over this past 2 years that I've been at the station, which is crazy to say I've been there 2 years, is that you might find you like the job more than you expected. I ended up, going to be a production assistant. I was like, I'm only gonna be here like not even a year. I'm gonna leave after a few months. So I'm gonna leave by October. That was a lie because I'm here 2 years now. And it's been the best 2 years. I mean, there's been struggles. It's not easy, but it's important to find silver lining. I'm learning a lot. I have so much experience. Um, when I was out in LA in September, where I got to see Adam, which was so nice. But a lot of my friends out there are production assistants, and they're not. It's not all of them are going to get coffee, but some of them are, and that kind of like sucks because like when I'm a production assistant, I'm able to get hands-on experience. And you're allowed to really learn things and take the opportunity to, which if you're working in like a bigger market, you're not going to do that. Um, but it's important to look to the future too, because I'm getting these skills, but then I'm like, okay, where am I going to go to next? And it's really important to keep applying for jobs. I've learned that keep applying, even if you don't know what you're going to do, just keep applying. Which I'm not good at. I haven't applied for jobs in a while, but I really need to get back into it because it's really hard. But just keep doing it, just keep your skills alive too, and practice everything. If it weren't for Shannon's classes, I don't know if I'd become a commercial producer and have those skill sets, so of like the Photoshop and different things in Premiere. So I'm able to learn a lot more too. And I like to say that I'm a baby adult because I'm 23. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do taxes. I don't know how to do any of these things. So it's like I'm still learning, and it's okay. You don't need to know what you're gonna do in the future. You don't. Um, you can have a goal, you can have a mindset, but you don't know what's gonna happen. I've learned so hard in the hard way, like just that things are gonna come out of the blue, and you're like, where did that come from? Like, and it just hits you, and you're like, oh my god, I need to prepare for this. Different things that happen in your family, different things like that. So yeah, just take everything one step at a time. If anyone's here is still in college, like just don't stress over things. I still don't know what I'm doing, but it's important, just keep, like I said, keep those skills alive, practice everything. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. I keep telling myself that too. I don't know if I'll be fine. I'll try. So my advice to you is like I said, just keep on practicing, keep getting those skills, but be enthusiastic, be really positive in your workforce, be be willing to do anything, because I I think it's funny, Gen Z has a bad rap of like being yappers, and I think that's true because I yap all the time at work. I'm going around talking to people, but if that didn't happen, I probably wouldn't have gotten to where I am right now. Um, when I started off, I was like, I'm not gonna know anybody in the building, and now I know everybody in the building. Like I work with all floors, I work all departments. Didn't think I'd say that, but you're gonna have amazing times. So on the top right picture is me holding a camera doing a live shot from like what are those called? Like a ski slope, ski thing. I don't know. So but it's high up and
Lift.
that's what's really what?
Chairlift.
Yes, thank you. I don't know what they're called. I don't ski. But it was at the fair, the same place I got the pickles. And I that was the first ever live shot I ever did. So I went live with a camera and the people were taking my picture with the host. And I was like, so I basically was like behind them and I had to like get them talking and it was just so scary and I've never done it, but it was so much fun. So just keep being enthusiastic, be willing to learn, be willing to do things. You're gonna learn so much. It's great. And my last thing is I want to pose to you guys a question because I'm curious what you guys think. Is broadcast dying? We are launching, my news station is launching a CTV app, basically streaming local news. So I have here KTLA because it's a Nexstar company. They already did it, obviously. We're not launching ours, I think, until June. But we have to come up with 10 to 15 hours of content a week. So a lot of things are getting restructured in my building, and they're asking for content from me, from different people. And I think that this is a great way to get people to watch local news. Streaming obviously is a big thing. We went from broadcast to digital, so I'm just curious. But I'm curious if you guys would like if you had a Roku app or whatever app, and would you stream your local news? Um, I don't know if I would, but I have cable, so I don't know. But I'm curious to see what I wait. Are people talking in the chat? Because never. You guys wouldn't. Oh, um, I'm curious as to why you guys wouldn't watch it. I mean, I kind of the same way, but they say that there's like really good viewers on there. I'm gonna stop sharing because I kind of want to see what everyone's thinking. That was my last slide, anyways. I'm curious what you guys think. Is broadcast gonna die?
Yeah, everything's gonna die. You know, it is how it is. Radio didn't die, but did it. So,
Yeah, I think the CTV app is an interesting way to bring it back if it's being brought back. You know, I don't know.
So my station also we just launched it on the 28th, our CTV app.
Oh wow.
Because I didn't realize all of Nexstar was doing it because we're also a Nexstar station.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Yes.
Yeah. But so we literally just launched it like last Friday. But ours, they told us we had to be 24 hours. So we're like really struggling to kind of restructure that, especially because now we're like we already were 24 hours as a news station, but now we have to format it for streaming. I don't know. I don't know how I view broadcast because streaming, we're not live for those 24 hours, so I don't know if it's considered broadcast if it's just streaming. I don't know,
Yeah.
like in that sense, it kind of is dying out if it becomes streaming, but the art of news, I don't think like news is always going to happen. So I don't think news broadcast in general is dying out. Maybe just like the cable aspect of it is, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, I definitely think that makes sense. Yeah, they have us doing, so we do have to do 24 hours of news too. But we have enough news that we cover, that we're able to rebroadcast things. So we really only have to come up with 10 to 15 hours a week of content, which is much less. Obviously, we're gonna put our news on. But Yeah, it's interesting to think like it's gonna change. Yeah, Hayden,
Yeah.
let's hear what you think.
I mean, I think until they can reliably get internet to every inch of this country, then you shouldn't even have to start worrying about the death of broadcasts because by nature of the medium, that is how most people get their information. And you just can't suddenly pivot 100% to streaming when that is not going to reach as many people. And even if, and I say if because it's definitely not going to happen, even if they somehow were to get a reliable internet connection to every house in the country, no matter where they are, um, 48 contiguous and Alaska and Hawaii included, I still don't think broadcast will die because, again, by nature of the medium, it is a more human way to receive information. And I think that is what is, if subconsciously, most important to how people want to receive their information. Like Chris just said, you can't have a 24-hour, you can't be live 24 hours. You can, but then you have to have the manpower to support being live for 24 hours, and that system is equally as unsustainable. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like I don't think it's going anywhere. And even if the shift becomes majority streaming, I still don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna go anywhere right now. I think people said that 20 years ago, and it's still here. And that's what the people who I work with who have been here in the industry for so long say. But I think it is changing. I think everything in our industry is changing, whether you're in film or TV or whatever. Yeah, and I think Ryan brought up a great point that like we are responsible. So if there's like a tornado or an earthquake or anything, we're responsible to go live and tell it like broadcast that news. So like when there's breaking weather, we're like, especially when there's a tornado warning, we have to be live. So yeah, emergency services need to be around. So like, and the TV cable is or broadcast is going to do that. Because we're I think we're responsible to. I think it's like part of our the contract. Yeah, the other thing with streaming too is that there's no FCC rules. So there's no guidelines. So it's interesting to think like how is this going to change, the way that broadcast is licensed controlled now. Because the FCC you can't obviously say like certain words. Um even though people do. People do. I've seen it. They're not supposed to, but they do. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, the earthquake in New York City. Sorry, I just saw that. Because yeah, that was we had to go live for that. Yeah, the FCC doesn't regulate streaming, so we're kind of allowed to do whatever, but we're kind of setting our own guidelines based off the FCC. So I'm wondering if the FCC is ever going to regulate that in some way, regulate streaming. Curious to see what everyone else thinks. Yeah, I think FCC will. I think FCC will regulate it at some point. They haven't gotten that point, but they might. I don't know. It's they were also supposed to FCC was supposed to cut out non-compete clauses. So the non so like if someone in our market wanted to go to the other station owned by another company, they're not allowed to do that. They have to wait a year before they can do that. But they were gonna get rid of it and then they didn't. So I don't know. Yeah, Jacqueline.
I so I interned at Disney Streaming, and there was a lot of different guidelines that we did have to do. So I think FCC will have to adapt, but Congress is just really, really freaking slow with that stuff. But I think it definitely will happen. I just don't know like when. Sorry, I just got out of the gym. I've just been listening at the climbing gym.
Good.
So
I get it.
It'll catch up eventually, but I worked specifically within I'm sorry, there's just like a baby carrier that's like hanging on some scab. It doesn't have anyone in it, but like okay. I was specifically within subtitles and like localization. And so there were certain guidelines that we had to hit in terms of like, okay, we need this amount of languages for these things, or like, okay, well, kids below the age of like 7 can't read. So you have like kids media has to be dubbed, not subtitled, even though that's cheaper. So like there was a lot of those types of regulations, at least on our end, just because that was the department I worked in. But I think in terms of like censoring things, I think it will happen. Like there's already like the rate different rating system for streaming, and I think it's just going to evolve further because like there's they even while I was at Disney, they evolved the maturity and parental guidelines in order to like shift the settings so that like you won't see like Peter Pan or really up on Disney Plus, I don't think, because of its misrepresentation of indigenous people. And then like if you have certain settings, you don't want kids to watch stuff where like you don't want them to watch stuff like Deadpool when there's like a bunch of cursing or like graphic violence. So they already have that stuff in place. So I think it's just the natural evolution of how TV is gonna go. Like we already have the Hays Code. It's just gonna keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why, like, I think, like, oh yeah, Zach, sorry.
Hi. Oh, first off, hi Brad. What's up? But then the second thing is, I kind of have a completely unrelated question because I wanted to ask you a question about what you were talking about. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
In working with resumes, um, you know, you talked about having your skills like you had motion graphic skills, but also broadcast skills, and that's like, you know, can be seen as like multiple different fields. So like, how did you sort of adapt to positions and stuff to like sort of market yourself for skills that may not seem at first relevant but were totally relevant, but if someone read it on paper they might not think so, but so you had to like reword it, you know? How did you work around that?
Like, that's such a great question. I feel like the skill set is very similar any communication industry. Because I know my mom does PR. So I grew up in a very communications household. Can you guys tell? Um, so my mom does PR and she does the same things that I do, same things that my dad does. There's different, but it is there's a learning curve. So like I feel like when I was taught in school, was always make sure like you fade to black or something like that, or no jump cuts, if you want a smooth transition.
Mhm.
News is very different. News, like none of that, because you have to think about how it's playing out. So like when I was learning to like edit, not learning to edit, when I was, given like exercises to edit, I was like doing this stuff and I was like, this is what I know. And they're like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. And I felt like I was dumb. I was like, oh my God, I spent my entire like college career editing. So I was like, I think I know how to edit. But it's just different. There's just different things you have to learn. As far as resume, I remember when I was interviewed, my production boss took one look at my resume. I was like, oh, typical Syracuse resume. Like, I don't know what that meant. Like, is there a typical Syracuse resume that I'm like that? I don't know. So clearly, like, I think the skill set you're learning at both Ithaca and Syracuse, like it's gonna transfer to any communications industry. Whereas I think like, so for example, one of my friends, she went for art psychology. That's a little bit more difficult if you're going to try to do that in
Right.
the communications field. But I think if you're a communications major in any sort, you're gonna be fine. Um, in fact, all the other production assistants I work with, their major was communications, just like straight across. Like there wasn't like a
Oh, okay.
specific field. So when I asked them, well, what was your like I had asked them what was their concentration. Um because they have to concentrate in broadcast or film or PR or different advertising. So they have a concentration, whereas I feel like I was very lucky in Syracuse where, it's obviously a great communication school, but we had very specific majors. There wasn't just one overall communications major. It was a whole school. So
Yeah.
I hope that was helpful. I hope that I answered your question.
Well, I feel like that like half answered, I think.
Okay.
No offense. But
No, no,
I
please tell me.
was sort of more talking about like in like if you were confronted with a particular scenario where you needed to like sort of word yourself or market yourself a certain direction, like do
Mm.
you have advice toward those types of wordings for, alternate field areas? Because I know you talked about them looking at your resume and seeing that, but then like what did you say in response to like describe how you could do what they wanted you to do, if it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'm trying to think, how did I end up responding to that when she said it was like a typical resume? I think I said something along the lines of like, well, I have these skills that I can, I gave like the basic I can edit, meaning like I can put two videos together because that's what they're looking for at the end of the day. They're looking, can you know the basics? Um so I felt like you're not, I'm not marketing myself towards the film industry or marketing myself towards broadcast. So I'm like, I can edit, I can do graphic design, I can do the basics for what they want. And then once you're in that job, you can be like this, like you can better hone your skills to the certain part of the industry that you're in. Does that answer your question? I hope I answered it.
I well, I
'Cause I
guess
don't know.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to phrase it. That's part on me for I need to find my phrasing here. I think like I guess specifically for like interviews and before jobs, like before getting into jobs,
Mhm.
like how does that sort of adapting apply to before you get the job? And what type of sort of um application materials did you compile for the for differing source differing jobs? How did you like find different stuff to prove it and talk about it and stuff? Sorry, it took me a while to reach that wording, but
No, you're okay. I can't say I don't I feel like I'm not the best person to answer this, but I'm gonna try to answer to my best ability. Um, so I would say that the things that I when I apply to jobs, I have a resume. And on there I have my skills. So I have like again, like I list the things I can edit in or the different software I use. And then when I need to explain something, I have my cover letter and I kind of like write like this is what I'm doing. I feel like also they see a production assistant on my resume if they looked at it a year ago and they would have been like, oh, she just gets coffee or something. So I really like try to be more specific, list details in my resume, and then in my cover letter, write more try to specific things in there.
okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
anyone else has advice who's like, I know there's a couple people who have been out of school longer than I have. If you guys have any advice too, please share.
Thank-
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
One
hope
thing
that
that
answered it.
yeah, and one thing that kind of helps for early career resumes or CVs when you don't have many places that you've worked is and also when you're trying to apply to things more broadly where they might be tangential, not directly relate. You don't have experience in that specific industry to which you're applying. Um, Listing competencies or responsibilities within those individual jobs sometimes helps that be decipherable to somebody kind of outside of that specific area and how that applies to another job. Yeah, just describe, like you said, Rowan, like describing what, not just a PA but what you did as a PA.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Like I think as a production assistant, especially like people look at that and they're like, what does that mean? What does that entail? Especially if you're, doing other things. So like when I applied for jobs and I was a production assistant, I would write down all the things I did, but then I would write that I was like helping out in creative services. I was making graphics, different things like that so that it obviously that's what I was doing, but then you want to make sure it looks better than what you actually did. So like
Okay, yeah.
the wording
Makes
of
sense.
it, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or no?
You
Okay.
actually, Erica posted in the chat demo reels. Is that something that, like, in broadcast, do you market yourself with a reel, or could you describe kind of how that's used, or if it's common, or yeah?
Yeah. So as a production assistant, no. A production assistant, when you're first getting into like if that's like your entryway in, you don't really need it. They'll basically hire like if you have a degree in it, but they really are looking for like a high school degree. I know people who were a production assistant, they didn't even have they didn't finish college. They just applied on a whim and they ended up getting it. So it's really like your skill set, but also thanks, Brian. I'll eat more fried pickles. Um they like are looking if you have like the right skill set, but also like the right mindset. Like, are you determined, motivated, things like that. When I applied for the commercial producer job, they were looking for a reel, but I also had to do a writing test, which I have never done writing like like when I went to college, I wanted to do that, and then I took a writing class, and they got nope, don't want to do that. So they'll send you a writing test. Basically, I had to write 3 different commercials. They give you prompts, and then they like say write a 30-second commercial, and you have to like write it out. So I ended up writing it out, and then I did some like it was an audio video kind of script, and I wrote like what the video would show. So they'll like ask you for different things, but a reel we do use, but not for like jobs that are like even like a photog. I don't know, Chris, if you ever had to share a reel, but a producer you don't need to like, yeah. But I think it's always good to have it too.
Yeah, as a photog, it was suggested that I send in a reel, but it wasn't required. Neither was a college degree, like they were just looking for high school graduation or GED. I mean, it helped having the degree. I won't deny that at all,
Yeah.
because if I came in with the same exact qualifications as someone else, but I had a degree and they only had the high school diploma, like they're gonna most likely go with the person with the degree. So it does help, but it's not required. Neither is a reel, at least as a photog at my station. Um, it's really interesting that they tested you. They didn't test us, at least for photog position. They didn't test us for anything. I did have 3 interviews though, and in the third, like each one got progressively more in depth about my skills. So like the first one, it was just okay, like 15-20 minutes on the phone. What experience do you have? And then the second one I did was in person, and it was with like the news operations manager, news director, and chief photographer. And they asked me more about like, okay, we went over your resume, we went over your cover letter, like tell us more about what you've done. And then the third and final one, they also had the assistant chief photographer, and they were asking me like a whole bunch of technical questions, like tell us about the cameras you've used, tell us about the operating systems you've used, how would you sequence a package or a VOSOT, or um to explain what those are for people that don't know. VOSOT is voice over sound on tape. So that would be like there's some natural sound, but they're doing a voiceover. A package is more of like it's lengthier. It could be anywhere from like a minute and 30 seconds to 3 minutes, I think, on average. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, just depends. But that would be like you have the reporter doing a stand-up in that. But so they would ask me questions about like, do you know what a VOSOT is? Do you know what a package is? Like, but yeah, a reel wasn't required. It does help to have one though, I would say. Like it definitely helped that I had a reel of sorts. Some of it was news that I had in it from undergrad. Some of it was projects that I did during my master's at Syracuse, because it shows that maybe you don't have the exact skills, but you have skills that can apply to the position. So
Yeah. Yeah, as a production assistant, you're obviously not getting asked all that. Like they're really just making sure you can do it, like work a camera. That's gonna be very. It's not as hard as like a photog out in the field is a little different than like a production assistant in studio. Um, but like when you move up, they're gonna ask you for more things like they're like a photog or a producer or someone else who's higher up than a production assistant. It's gonna be more questions, like Chris kind of stated. So thank you for that because I had no idea. I obviously was never a photog, so yeah. Yeah, Zach.
Hi, I actually have a question for you, Christopher, about what you were just talking about. Would you sort of say that those three interviews, the progression was kind of like the first was kind of like fact finding, and then the second was kind of like more in-depth skill related, and then third was more like technical leaning? Is that sort of the progression? Because I've heard that's the way it is for other types of jobs. I was wondering if that was the same with your experience.
Yeah, I'd say that that's pretty much exactly how you said it. I don't know if that's
Oh,
for
cool.
everyone in the field, but that's how like my station kind of started the progression of it. Was the first one was really just like a short, like almost getting to know you at that point, just seeing that you
Oh,
actually like had interest, you didn't just throw in an application, kind of like that. Second one, it was more of like, okay, now we want to know more directly about like what you've done. And then the third was definitely more on the technical side of it and trying to figure out like, okay, let's say we have three top choices. How are we going to now determine who we want? And I think that's where the third kind of became the most like, I guess, challenging. It was definitely the most nerve-wracking of the three interviews because they were asking such specific questions that I like actually studied before the interview to
oh,
prepare
okay.
myself for it because I was like, I don't know what they're gonna ask me. And I'm also just like a generally nervous person. So that didn't help either.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm just gonna like brush up on everything because I know that they could ask me technical questions,
Right.
and I'm glad that I did study
Right.
before it.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thanks for the clarification and the tip. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's insane actually, because I had one interview each for both of my jobs that I applied for. And then like it was like, yeah, you got the job. I was like, cool, thanks. So that's so funny because I've never had like multiple rounds of interviews. Oh, that scares me now for the future. Great. Um, yeah.
I
Is there
promise it really wasn't that scary. Like it was just
okay.
I think it's more of just because I'm like a nervous person, like an anxious person. I don't know. That's just
Yeah.
how I am. I am not very outgoing and like confident in that kind of stuff. So for me, I think it was also just why I was a lot more like I need to study. Like I studied before every interview, but especially that third one. Um, and also this was my hiring process was really weird too. Like I started hiring process in September. And I only just started in February. So it was really extended because of like budget cuts and just a
Yeah.
lot of things happening at the time. I don't think it normally takes 5 months to get
No.
hired for one position. Yeah. So I think that's also why they did the three interviews was because it was so drawn out that like they were checking with that too. So
Yeah, that's what happened with me in September. I had to do two jobs because they was like hiring freeze, and then did it for till January. I think January was like my last day I did it, like
yeah.
the last day of the month. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah. Are there any other questions? I feel like it's going longer and everyone's leaving. I hope everyone. Thanks for coming. If you here, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Rowan. I'm going to shut the recording off so
Okay.
people can ask off the record questions.
Okay.